Pretty much the same for the most part. I do put a little jojoba oil in there sometimes, a little shea butter, stuff like that. When it's really cold outside, my beard is all actual scruffy and rough. But other than that, for the most part, I'm with him.
I try to apply this thing called DAX. It's called DAX.
I've heard of that.
DAX. I try using that once, but then when I use it, if it gets warm, I start getting the smell, you know, like, and I get very uncomfortable with that, so I stopped it. I was like,
well, you know, it was keeping my beard really soft for a while when I was still dyeing it, but now I've given up on dyeing in my beard anymore. It was like at one point all I had was gray hair, like right there, so I was dyeing just to make it all like even. Now I'm like, who cares? It's pretty much all over my beard now, so.
You can't run away from the grace, man.
Nah, I mean, it was in balance. I had it all on one side of my face, so I was a little cautious about it. I ain't feel right about it, but now it's everywhere, so I'm rocking it.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. I'm gonna see how far I can go with these little babies that are coming. but it looks good. It looks good on you both. I like
Thank
it.
You, sir. Thank you,
So, Kenon, Francis, you know, anybody want to give a shout out to? It's a new year, you know, new season. There's a lot in store. You know, 2020 is not so far behind us, but you know, there's a lot to look forward to, right?
Maybe Kenon, you want to start? This is my first time doing this, man.
Go for it. I mean, I don't really have anybody to shout out per se. Now, no offense to anybody who might be watching and saying you should have shouted me out, but you know, in the spur of the moment, not really, man. And you know my mindset, Chebs. So if anything, let's let this young man have a chance to say something.
Well, what I would say is shout out to people out there. To real love.
That's it.
To real love, to family, to friends and foes, you know. And everybody who has been thinking on me, who has ever thought of me in a positive direction, shout out to you. I don't have to know you, but if you've ever thought of me in a positive way, shout out to you. Blessings for 2021, all the best, and I wish everybody only what you wish for yourself, the best of it.
Couldn't have said it better in the real Pap de Your way. We'll talk one day about how we have these nicknames, but yeah, Kenon, you know, this man, you know, we grew up together, eh?
Yeah, we went to the same school, in the same boarding school in Africa, man.
Okay.
We lived in the same boarding school for 5 years in Africa, in the dungeons of the doldrums. You know, it was in the the school was in the actual jungle. It was built in the jungle to prevent us radical students from escaping and going outside. So, because it's a secluded environment, that's why they built the school, so they would keep the students together. So, you know, so you kept away from the city life. And you focus on education.
And I can do that indeed.
Yeah, so we were stuck together for 5 years, and then after that, you know, we became really good friends. When I came to Canada, I lived with him.
That's what's up.
Yeah, I lived with him for a while before we all separated. But yeah, he was my receiver in Canada when I got in.
We can write some books about our stories.
I know, man. I look.
About our exploits and stories.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Francis, you know, he's gonna. I want him to join us to be a regular contributor on the show, because as we say, you know, the spirit of the show is all about you know, cooperating, bringing our collective thoughts, creating a space for conversation, promoting each other in different ways, but also opening up that opportunity for people to have frank, honest conversations about real issues, right? That otherwise elsewhere.
I like your stuff, you know. I've been, you know, I always follow your stuff. I always like your stuff. I always see you every time you're online. But this is my actually, you know, joining you live. But I always make sure I give a shout out with my likes on Facebook. That's my own way of showing my appreciation or respect for what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I think what you're doing is it's excellent.
Thank you, Kenon. Should we talk about some of what, and Francis, weigh in on this. Should we talk about some of the craziness that has happened this week in Washington, D.C.? I never, one of my friends, and I don't know if he's on here, I would call him, but one of our friends, Dawson, very good friend of mine, he's out there in D.C. Dawson, if you're watching, shout out, brother. I just saw a post he made, and he asked about what people thought was the most important historical thing that has happened in their lifetimes. I think that's the question. And people were saying a bunch of things, but it got me thinking about what we just witnessed in DC the last week, because, you know, I would never, I should say that, I would never have thought that, you know, we will see such a thing, and not just that we will see rioters or people, you know, storming the Capitol Hill, but incited by the President of the United States. So it's pretty incredible, and you are right at the heart of it. So I'm wondering if you have any perspective, any thoughts, and we're going to talk about what that means for, you know.
Kenon, you sorry to interrupt you, Mark. Kenon, you in the States?
Yeah, I mean, right outside of DC, in Northern Virginia.
Oh, so you're witnessing the thing live. Did you go? Were you among the rioters? Did you go into the?
No. Well, however, I was taking my aunt to the doctor that morning, and so we had to sit around, wait for her to come out of her appointment for about an hour, and we were right across the bridge in DC, in Virginia, and as we were leaving her doctor's appointment to take her back home, I saw at least 50 big pickup trucks with out-of-state tags come driving past me, going south. They were leaving the city, like getting out of there, I guess, before it got too thick. And then I also witnessed 25 to 30 different police vehicles coming northbound from the Virginia police departments to go help in DC. This is a very weird thing, yeah. And one of the things I've come to understand is that the way that our governments nowadays operate to create a narrative or get people to have a certain mindset is that they create, they create crises. They have people that go out and act and do these things on purpose so they can actually have someone they can blame when they want to shift the society to a different way. And so one of the things that I found interesting, the more I watched it, the more I saw holes in everything. The fact that the police just let them walk in, people complaining that there wasn't enough police presence, they were there. In fact, like I said, they had help from Northern Virginia police departments. Yeah. But it seems very, very staged as a way to push society into this global economy that a lot of Americans and even Trump supporters don't really want to be a part of, because I believe that there are countries around the world who do not want to be a part of this global system. They want to remain sovereign and do things the way that they're used to doing it without having checks and balances from other countries and other entities telling them what to do. And many Americans are coming to the realization that our voting of democracy is not a real democracy. As I've said to you before, it's an illusion of inclusion. And it gets people to believe that they have a part of the system. And now you see a certain group of people in this country who are starting to realize that it doesn't work. But then there's also that small group of white people that believe that this country was made for them, and therefore they see it getting darker and changing its complexion, and they're not happy with that. And not every one of them, in my humble opinion, are racist. There's definitely a racist component to it. But many of these are just Americans who don't want to see the country they thought turn into something else. For example, you see now in America, we're about to have the Democrats running all three parts of our government. So there's no real checks and balances anymore. So any law or bill that they want to pass for the next 4 years, for the most part, there's not going to be any type of like anyone to say no or really anybody to oppose it. We're in a really weird time. And I think a lot of Americans have this type of mentality to believe that nothing like this could ever happen here, that there could never be civil unrest or anything crazy. But most people don't understand their history. Most people believe the things that we were taught in our school books. Most people believe that we got out of slavery because somebody had a bright conscience to think it was the right thing to do. And it was the northern half of this country that says, no, we don't want to do this anymore. No, that's baloney. Bottom line is, in London at the times, I believe it was 1815, if I'm not mistaken, the year was that, and you can look this up. Basically, what they said, and not verbatim, is that if we don't stop America from making the money that they're making off of free labor, they'll never be able to be matched or touched again. So basically, they had to come in and find a way to end that movement here in America, make it industry, make us work with the rest of the world. So therefore, they could no longer continue to get richer and richer to where no one would be able to check America if they would have kept doing that for another couple hundred years. Even though we're doing that within our jail system, there are people of color now who are actually getting paid and working 9 to 5s, and we're making plenty of money, and spending the most money in this country at that. It's just a turning point. Like Malcolm X said, as the chickens come in the roost. You know, they started off something that they thought was going to work for them a certain way, and then realized, like every nation, there's always somebody who's willing to help destabilize that country as a means to put their hands on it. And then if we have all this debt from our federal government, the Federal Reserve, and other countries that have loaned us money, if I were loaning people money, they ain't pay me back after a while, we're going to have problems. So it's one of those things I don't think people really realize what's happening here. I think people think, oh, the Trump is bad, man, and he got all those people to act crazy and do all this, and they went to the Capitol. And the one thing that most people don't even realize is that it wasn't just D.C. This was a very well organized plan. They were going around capitals all across the country. It just didn't go the way that they intentionally planned for it to go. But it was also, in my humble opinion, a ruse in the sense that they didn't really do anything that day. They didn't kidnap anybody. I saw people with the plastic handcuffs and things of that nature. I think it was a test run because it really gave them an idea of, hey, this is what we can do. And January 20th is going to be an interesting day. It's going to be a very interesting day.
Certainly. I want to ask you this. I think, yeah, there's certainly, I mean, for the, you know, there certainly be that change where sometimes the Republicans have full control of both houses, you know, like all the institutions of power. And, you know, sometimes it flips back to the Democrats and they do that. And then other times it's a divided government. So you think that this is not good for, it's not going to be good for America for the Democrats to have full control so Joe Biden can at least restore, you know, his speeches. He wants to restore civility. He wants to bring back some healing, at least bring back, you know, the country to a point where, as he would say, majority of Americans see and hope that that is the America that is projected to the world. Now, whether you agree with him or not, you also have to recognize that 80 million people, 70 something million people voted for Trump in the last election. So, you know, whether that's going to be a task that he can accomplish politically or just in the institutions, given that the Democrats have control of the both houses now. And what are your thoughts on that?
It's all rigged, first of all. I mean, the left wing and the right wing work for the same bird. So ultimately, when they choose these politicians to put them in their place, they are there for a reason. And Trump was the wild card of this generation. He came in and he literally just drained the swamp in the last few days, to be quite honest, because one of the things that he may not have intentionally have done was by arousing that group of militant, or what people want to call them, domestic terrorist type of white people in this country. By waking them up, he also got a lot of them to expose themselves. And many of them were arrested due to that, to the bill that he passed about people destroying federal property. So even though that was targeted towards Antifa and Black Lives Matter, it actually ended up hurting the Proud Boys and the MAGA people more than it hurt anyone else, because they actually went through and destroyed some property. Therefore, many of them have been arrested in federal charges. Many of them have felonies now. So whether he did that directly or indirectly, he did. And one of the things that I see that's kind of funny is that one of the things I learned a few years ago was on the Stormfront website, which is a white supremacist website. One of the things that they believe is that in a world ran by the Ashkenazi Jews, that they're going to overthrow the Aryan white man and replace that power structure with people of color. And the reason why they believe that's possible is because they think that, A, they know that we're the majority and we've been held down too long. But because the Ashkenazi Jews that run our world, that own all the major businesses and things of that nature across this world, see us as a means to be able to be easily controlled, because after 400 years or more of oppression, and you give us a little power and some keys to the seats at the table, we'll be happy as shit for the most part. And so it's an easy way for them to maintain their control by giving us the guys that we now have some power. And then on top of that, you see Caucasians that are going to be upset with that, those who are in a white supremacist mindset. So I hope I'm not rambling too much. The whole thing is that this all seems very contrived. This seems as a means to move society into a way of globalism, into a one world economy, judicial system, and which leaves you nowhere to hide or do anything that doesn't go according to the rule of law created by very few people. And that's what I believe a lot of people are starting to get afraid of, is that no one wants to be told what to do on that type of level. I mean, we already have politicians that are 75, 80 years old telling people what to do in the world that they didn't grow up in. You know, at some point you should say, hey, you know, maybe these people should retire at 65, you know, or 60 or whatever it may be. But ultimately, look, if I were a part of a group of people that went into a foreign land and took it over by being conniving, using biological warfare, and then indoctrination later on after you do conquer that land, there's no way in hell that that group of people is going to allow people to vote that power out of their hands. So we're watching, which is why I've said so many times that we're close to a civil war in this country, is due to the fact that people don't want to see that exchange of power that way. People who have worked or believe that they've worked for where they are in this country, even if it has been handed down to them from the blood of our ancestors, and they've had land and property and businesses since then, they don't want to give that up. You know, and ultimately, I wouldn't if I were in their shoes either. Look at what's happening in South Africa. It's almost the exact opposite of what's happening here. Just a change of power. And it's one of those things that I think people are waking up to, the fact that, like, for example, if Donald Trump can be removed from Twitter and all these different websites, and people want to call him a dictator, dictators don't get silent like that. So the people who are doing that and telling him what to do, in my opinion, are the true dictators. And people really need to wake up and see that.
Francis, you got any thoughts?
Like Kenon said, I hope I'm pronouncing your name the right way. If I'm
You got it.
Correct me, please, okay?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm not much of a political person.
I knew you'd say that. I was waiting for it.
But when I saw what happened, you know, there's ways you can look at it from the political point of view, from an individual point of view, from a racial point of view, from a societal point of view. You know, there's layers to that action. And I don't care about, not I don't care, but I'm not really emphasizing on the political side. I look at it from a society side. For example, when we were kids back home, when we were still trying to distinguish our left from right, everybody, the one dream we had was to go to America. Everybody wanted to go to America, because that was, you know, I don't know if it is, but it was the #1 country in the world. It was a place to be, you know, because we believe that it was an exemplary society where you can go and live in, you know, because of what we saw on the media or whatever they sold us. We bought it, but we believe that the US was the best place to be. You know, now this has happened, you know, it goes a long way. It goes a long way to tell you that, to bring to you that imperfection of the system. You know, that belief that you had once had, that this is a place where I want to be. And the US also, back home, you know, when we're doing history, the US was the basis of democracy in Africa. It was a measuring unit for democracy. When they talk about democracy, the first country you're looking at is the US. Because we believe that everything was was sincere, honest, and that's what we believed then, that, you know, it was the perfect society, political to live in. But now look at what happened. You know, this is the stuff that happens in developing countries or underdeveloped countries. This is the stuff. This is even worse because in developing countries, they don't storm the presidency.
They'll shoot everybody down.
You know? So now this has happened. The other layer is race. You know, the color of your skin. What those people did, if you were a person of color, you would never have gone even a kilometer close to that place. And from what I saw or read, the cops were taking selfies with the rioters. So it comes back to the question of humanity, sincerity. That's the way I look at it. I don't see the political side because, again, I don't like politics. But nowadays, it's hard to live without getting involved in this politics. I think politics is it's not a good thing. I don't get involved in it. I just stay away from it and try to, you know, not focus on it. But seeing what happened, you know, so that's my take on it. And my beliefs or my inspiration I had. Like right now, if I'm my sisters back home or brothers, I will not send them to the US. I will not ask them to go to the US because that dream that we once had has been tarnished and, you know, destroyed. So that's my take from that.
Chebs, well, that's interesting to hear you say that because it made me remember a point I was going to say earlier when you had said something about Joe Biden trying to bring in some healing. So that healing to me is BS due to the fact that it seems like when people say they want to get back to some normalcy or get that bad man out of the White House, people want to get comfortable and be societal slaves again. People weren't happy before all this happened. They weren't happy. People were complaining about this, the minimum wage, all the things that were going on in this country. All over the world, people have been unhappy for many years. And the word democracy, in my humble opinion, is just the means of a way to keep people from going and killing the king when shit gets too damn tough by making you believe that you are part of your own structure of your society versus when it's really a king and a few people telling you what and how things are going to go. And then they'll shift you through things and crises throughout society to make you go along with your own demise. And the one thing about America that they've learned from Nazi Germany, especially after Operation Paperclip, where our military went into Nazi Germany before the Nuremberg trials and took a whole bunch of scientists and so on and so forth and brought them here to America. So in turn, that became a fabric of our society. NASA was created by Werner von Braun, who was a Nazi. We still have companies that were owned by Nazis like Bayer, which is a pharmaceutical company. And then you have shoe companies like Adidas, who was created by Adi Dassler. And his brother created Puma. And if you think about it, look at the damn shoes. There's 3 stripes on it, which is representative of the Third Reich. So we're literally just living in a modernized version of Nazi Germany where they have realized this is how we put people and treat people so that they don't rebel too fast. And when society becomes too intelligent, we have fail-safe mechanism. And this is what I consider to be a fail-safe mechanism. I believe that COVID, I believe that these lockdowns are part of our fail-safe mechanism for the elite to maintain their power before they lose it when people finally decide to go and tear up the streets. Because if you saw in Wuhan or in China as a whole, they were tearing the streets up, protested and fucking shit up over there in China until COVID came and they all had to go in the house. And what do you see now? I saw it in Metro the other day where there was a sign of like a 3 like cartoon characters. One was which a person had their mask down like this with their nose covered and it says, "Don't be this person." And then there was another where it had it like this and they were covered and they were talking to somebody. It says, "Don't be this either." And then the next picture of the cartoon slide has them going like this and it says, "Be like this." So basically they want you to be anti-social. They don't want you to communicate. They don't want you to gather in large groups unless it's something that they orchestrated that makes them money. So this is a way to break down society that's becoming too hard to control for the very few people who run it. And I don't believe there is a way to come back from this because there are many businesses across this country that have closed for good. And even if the government gave the money to reopen, how do you instill trust in a business platform? I've been working in the restaurant business for 18 years, bartending. So if you were to tell me that I can go back and work in that same field again, I wouldn't trust it to put all my dimes into it because if something like this happens again, it'll be shut down again. And you're talking about one of the major businesses in this country is the restaurant business. People spend more money going out to eat than they do doing anything. I remember when I started, there was like 6 restaurants in downtown DC within a few blocks radius of where I started in the heart of Chinatown. And then after a few years, there's hundreds of restaurants down. And now, boarded up, closed. New York it's more to do in DC than there is in New York City right now. New York City is much bigger than DC, and it's nothing to do there. Everything's been boarded up, everything's been shut down. So that's going to tear our economy to a place that we can never come back from, which will usher in socialism. So the government can give you handouts like you see the European Union. They have ads that says, own nothing, be happy. We're at a turning point right now that unless people are willing to sacrifice it all and tear everything the fuck down and start anew, we're just going to this next level where they want to get into transhumanism and giving people body parts and from robotics and this world is what we're seeing the movies happening right in our eyes. I mean, watching what happened in DC was like watching The Dark Knight Returns when Bane was on the steps and they were all fighting and shit. But like you said, the police allowed them in there, and then there's this element of people of color going, well, if that would have been us, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Well, my humble opinion with that is no shit. We're prisoners of war in this country and in many countries around this world. We've just been given, like through segregation in this country, we were, integration, I should say, they allowed us to work in the confines of their society as long as we had our hair cut a certain way and our names weren't too ethnic, which is why you look at the Cosby Show. That was a means of what am I looking for the word of trying to get people to assimilate into the society, saying that if your name is, like, first of all, who in the hell in Brooklyn is named Heathcliff Huxtable? His son is Theodore Aloysius Huxtable, the youngest daughter, Rudith, Claire, Denise, and I may be missing somebody, but these are not typical names for people of color that live in Brooklyn, even if they're highly educated. So ultimately, we are just watching this world try to assimilate people of color, but it's getting out of hand now because people are starting to become too aware for their own good. And evil can never last, and nothing really ever lasts forever. They can have all the arrogance, all the machines, all the robots that they want to, but there's always a means to an end of any type of society, especially when it's ran off of tyrannical rule. So, and the one thing that I'm actually the most annoyed in this situation is that there are many people who believe that Joe Biden is going to bring in this peace and get rid of the bigots that we did, the bigotry that we dealt with over the last 4 years. But I would rather deal with them showing themselves and exposing themselves versus us going back to where they can go back and work in the police departments and go back and work in the government and nobody knows who they are. And then so they can continue to do what they want. I would rather shit really hit the fan, personally. I don't want to lose my life or see anyone I love really die for anything in vanity, but at the same time, I don't want us to continuously believe that we're living in a world that's progressively getting better, which is why many conversations that you've had on the show before, there were times I bit my tongue because I don't want to sound pessimistic and say that there's no solution. But the only solution, in my humble opinion, is destroying this shit from the bottom up and starting over. There's no putting a patch on the hull of a leaky boat. There's no way of saying that, well, these people killed our ancestors. It told us, for example, people like myself, that we came from Africa over across the worst ocean in the world from West Africa, and that doesn't even make any damn sense. My great-grandmother is Native American. She passed a few years ago, but all my ancestors are from here. And I'm not saying any way to say that I have no love or ownership of what is considered to be the motherland of this world. But if you look around everywhere in this world, people of color have been everywhere first.
Yeah.
So ultimately, by us learning that we were from here, they tricked us into telling us that we came from Africa so they could make us not even believe that we should own the shit that we already did. Like Malcolm X said it best. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. And it just goes over everybody's head. And then people want this peace and this normalcy, and they're voting for the essential things that will take away the ability to actually be free. He's already saying he wants to ban guns, and I know they've done that before, but there's a better chance of that happening nowadays than it ever has been because of the fact that they're afraid of citizens taking power back from the people. So if they want to tell us that, go ahead, Chebs.
No. Very interesting conversations. I have different views on some of the issues, but I want to ask this because you mentioned something here, which is there's a research that just came out the other day. They were saying that there was a research that was done that traced all of our DNA to East Africa. That's the entire humanity. It doesn't matter Caucasian, Black. We all originate. We were all origins from that continent, and then eventually with all the migration to whatever, and people became. So I found that very interesting, which sort of ties into what you say. Notwithstanding, doesn't take away from what you said that your ancestors are from America. You could talk about the ancestral links, but your ancestors are from where they were, but all of us are still tied to sort of the motherland Africa in various ways. That doesn't take away from that. That's just what I was trying to point out. Yeah.
If you want to finish.
Yes, but I wanna ask about something. So you talk about and we've had these conversations before about this idea that we should, in order to really address some of the issues that we face, we need to tear everything down, tear the shit down, and start over from scratch. That's how you say it. So the question to you then is, how do you do that? Because in order to do that, you need a certain will, right? And we've seen that kind of collective will, say for like what happened when you had the Bolshevik Revolution, things like that. That kind of a collective will is not there. Take, for example, the Occupy Wall Street. That happened a few, sometime back in the past, not so long ago. There was this move to sort of dismantle the systems as perceived and try to build back new systems that were more inclusive, more equal, and address some of these things you're talking about. But you know how that ended, right? So when are we going to be able to bring, and also you have to understand that there are also egocentric interests, even amongst those of us who you would say are on the bottom, right? You say there's the elite class that control everything, and then there's everybody else. But even among those, there's people that want to remain attached, want to remain involved, accessing resources. So is there ever going to be that collective will to say, let's dismantle the systems and start from scratch?
Can I say something just to back up Kenon a little bit?
Go ahead.
This is my perspective from what Kenon said, that you have to, like you said, for everything to work, they have to tear down the entire system, and, rebuild it. I think I'm in favor. I support that. But my view is when I don't know what tear down you're talking about, or what rewiring or rebranding the system, I don't know what are the logistics, but this is my standpoint. You're right. We need to tear everything down and start building from scratch. But when I look at it, I don't think when they say tear down, it means physically. We don't need to go bring down buildings or occupy streets or carry. Again, this is my humble opinion. So when if you say tear down, this is how I look. I think it's an individual. First, it has to start from within. It has to come from within. There can be no without when the within is fucked up. So I think we need to tear ourselves down, because you sitting here, Kenon, you Mark sitting here, Kenon, we are all victims. We are all part of a problem of this society, even though we are aware of what is going on. But yes, we consciously or subconsciously contribute to some of the problems of this society. So yes, I think we need to tear our mentalities, especially us of color. We need to tear ourselves down and portray first that self-love and the love to the next brother. And like they say in economics, if you want to increase the cash flow or the economy of a country by 20 billion, you don't need to pump 20 billion into the economy. All you do is you pump in 4 billion, and the multiplier effect will take place. The economy will generate 20 billion. So I think if individually we start tearing ourselves down, start tearing our mentalities down, start actually going for what we need than what we want, then We're going to tear our mentalities down. And by doing that, you pass that on to your son or to your sister or to your friend. Gradually, we start building that mass. The most dangerous weapon is the mouth, the tongue. Donald Trump, what did he do? He didn't go out there and physically bring this people. All he did was use his words, and the people came in. So I think you and me and whoever, we have this power. All we have to do is go down within, tear it down, rebuild it, rebuild our conception of the society we currently live in, and actually question some of the things that happen around authenticity. I think the moment you and me and everybody becomes authentic, we're going to tear the society down and rebuild it.
Interesting, very, very interesting perspective.
That's my take. I think that it has to start from within.
Right.
You're right. You're right, because for people like us, if we hadn't have already started from within in the sense of educating ourselves and seeing the world,
there you go.
We wouldn't be able to have this conversation. However, when you said a moment ago, Chebs, about why did that end, like the was it the Occupy Wall Street, things of that nature, because we end up getting pacified. They find ways to get us to, yay football, yay basketball, let's watch this, let's go buy this, the shiny PlayStation 5, let's have this. So we're pacified. And that's how they keep us from acting out and being too radical. However, just like I said to you before, that I believe that we were on the verge of a civil war, I didn't know what was going to happen on the 6th in the capitals across this country, not just DC. But I knew that we were at that bowling front. I could see the temperature in the air. I'm very aware of what's going on around me. I'm in gun shops all the time. I'm on the internet. I got friends all over the world. So I could kind of see this thing coming. So when I say that we'll eventually tear things down, it may not happen in our lifetime. Because we may get very close to what we've seen in the movies of the artificial intelligence, people having little checkpoints and retina scans and go in the store. That may very well happen. But what will eventually happen is people will get sick of it. The boot on the neck will get too tight. People will remember or know of a time where, like, I don't know what comedian that says about a dog saying, man, we used to be wolves. And eventually human beings are going to look down at their fingernails and go, man, these used to be weapons. My canines used to be weapons. We used to be bigger, stronger people. And eventually somebody's going to get frustrated from where they're being put. Like if you leave the type of wrong dog in the cage too long, they're going to find a way to get out. They got to dig a hole underneath of the cage. They got to kill the owner when they let him out the next time.
You guys, excuse me. Let me 2 minutes. Let me take a call. Okay.
I just say that eventually it'll happen when people finally get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's not probably anytime soon, because right now people are still under the illusion or the veil of the way that our society runs. There's people out there really believe that Trump did all this shit himself. Even though he's now silenced across the internet, people really believe that because of his words impacted those people. But it was also the 8 years of watching a black family walk around the White House that allowed him to even have that power of his tongue. Because that scared the shit out of that base. Oh shit, they got Somalian people running in Minnesota. You got people running the White House that are people of color. That freaked them out. They were starting to see the country get too black for their own good. So therefore, when Trump came in and spoke their language just to get elected, that was a part of the 8 years previous that allowed that. Then if we don't take into consideration what happened on 9/11, we wouldn't have a lot of these laws and bills that we're living under right now, where our freedoms have been taken from us, where they're able to basically snoop on us and do whatever they want to through our privacy of our cell phones, our TVs, whatever. But one thing is this. One of the things I find interesting in movies, and I always laugh at this plot, and I mention movies because it imitates life, is that when you see movies where there's a big battle, and one of these movies that does it a lot is like Star Wars. They'll fly in to a whole planet and land in one city, and that city's war changes the outcome of the whole planet. So when I say that is that people have to remember that what's going on in North America is what's going on in North America. So even if we were to tear this infrastructure down, take their technology, burn it down, you still got China, you still got Russia, you still got Europe, you still got Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, which are actually the real rich places. They just didn't want to invite your ass there. So as he was saying earlier about like America being a place to go to, was because it was an invitation as a means to create the situation that we have here financially and for them to get richer. Look at what happened this year. People lost money on a huge scale and the rich got richer. So like I was saying before you stepped away, I was like, this
that.
country invited you here, whereas the real dream places that would have been places like Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, where there's no homelessness. The economy is flawless for the most part, but they don't really welcome too many brown folks there though. They're keeping that shit for themselves, and even have like the seed banks there where they're controlling the seeds. They're basically planning to wipe out a bunch of indigenous people and try to keep the world to themselves. It won't work, but that's what they believe they can do because of their technology and artificial intelligence. They believe that they can get to a point where they can make us sterile, kill off enough of us, create civil wars and genocide, and then one day they will be the minority. But look, I am no way, shape, or form racist. My son is biracial as well. And I'll touch on that in another part in a second, is that ultimately we're all in this together. But we have dividing lines of our cultures, things that we have been taught growing up from our parents and ancestors, and it affects us all differently. But white people make up less than 9% of the whole world's population. And now they're at a negative birth rate because they're having babies with us. They're having babies with Asian and Hispanic people and so on and so forth. And then homosexuality doesn't allow them to give birth. And then on top of that, diseases and other things that are plaguing the white community across the world. So from drug use to diseases and things of that nature, they're dying off, and they know that. They know that in another 100 years, they don't end up like infiltrating or killing us off or sleeping with us and our women and having biracial babies that will eventually grow up to be white men of a different shade. They know it's over for them. And the writing's on the wall. And I think that it's just uncomfortable for us to come to that realization, because one of the things that I was going to touch on when it comes to the race thing is that here we have clear proof of how animals across this planet change their structure from where they move to one place to the next. From a bearded dragon to a water dragon, which is green and the other one's beige, or this fish changes colors and stripes when it moved here. And then for human beings, we act like, oh, we were just always here at the same time. Like, nah, there's a polar bear running around in the Arctic somewhere, right? The only difference is that polar bear didn't get on a boat and come to America and start having babies all over America. And if it did, the polar bear would probably be extinct, because it would be breeding with grizzly bears and black bears, and after a few generations, there will be no more polar bears. So they're doing what they can to keep this look, which allows them to maintain power from a means of separation and division. If they were to just blend in with us, there'd be a harder way to get people to say, this is the power structure. This is the caste system that we live in. They've been giving us the power to have an ability to make it. If we're lighter in color, if we're darker, then farther to the bottom of the chain that we go. Just like in India, they try to reform it and change that over the years. But I think when people are starting to realize that this world is under the same evil, no matter where you go, and until that evil is eradicated, it's just going to continue. I think that because we have it shiny shit and we think that this technology is great, in all honesty, when you said earlier about the buildings going down, they have to at some point. It's not meant for this world. We're not supposed to live in big ass cities and buildings that are hundreds of feet tall with thousands of people living in them. I mean, that's not safe. That's not smart even from a natural resource standpoint. If there's not enough food growing in the area to feed the amount of people, then you fucked up. Because now what happens is we get to a point where if an EMP blast goes off, or truck companies aren't allowed to deliver food, or we're already in a food shortage, which is why most of our food is genetically modified. Because there really isn't enough food growing now to feed all the people, because they built cities on top of this shit. So in my humble opinion, it will all have to go, because they're relying upon these buildings. They have underground cities right here in DC, Crystal City, and all over the world, tunnels that run from east to west. So they're relying upon this physical infrastructure for them to maintain their power. So until that falls, they're going to keep it. But it's all cyclical.
Wow, very, very interesting perspectives on all forms of, societal ills. And I think Kenon is right there in the heart of it all in the US, where this week's events have sent shockwaves around the world. And we're just getting some reactions. But I was going to ask this question, for any of this to happen, because on the other side of it, we have this fear of world government, world domination, and things like that. Those who are biblically inclined will know that the Bible talks also about that. As you approach the ends of times, there's a lot of talk about that. So how do you get everybody to sort of come together and think alike in terms of, unmasking, dismantling these structures if we don't create the exact same thing that we're sort of running away from. You get what I mean? Like, you're gonna have to create, if we talk about world government, same currency, same things towards the end of time, and we want to get people to come to a point where we're all thinking about our humanity and how we want to rebuild going forward in the same way, then we're in a sense saying that we're going to have to create exactly what it is that we're running away from or what we fear the most in order to achieve that feat. Or don't you think?
I don't believe, like I said, it'll happen because somebody pushed the button or told people to move that way. I think it'll come at a moment of desperation. When people are really like you look at the movie like The Matrix, when they're at the point where they're living in fucking underground and they finally have to fight their way out. It'll have to get to that point where people finally have the same way looked and they understand, yo, I want freedom. Freedom now. When you get mad enough, you'll take it. But we're not there yet because we have too many shiny things. We have too many reliabilities on technology and things that make our lives convenient. For example, I know you had something to say. I'm going to finish up real quick. People will actually vote against their own lifestyle. For example, one of the quickest ways to vote against your own lifestyle is when you go into a store and you choose a machine over a human being, you're saying, I want this to continue. I want more machines and fewer human beings working those jobs. And so you're voting against your own lifestyle, saying that that human being is going to be replaced by that machine. Another way that it's happening in this country is that how in the world can you tell me, especially because of the fact that this is not an automatic rifle or a weapon of war, and it's not a, what do you call it, an assault rifle, as I told you before. It's an AR-15, which means armor-like. But by telling me, as Joe Biden says, he's going to ban these weapons and then charge me $200 for one of these 30-round magazines as a tax, and I only paid $14 for this damn thing, that's attacking the poor. And as history has proven before, you saw what happened to the Turkish government. When they banned guns from Armenian people, what came next? They slaughtered the Armenians. So voting against your lifestyle by saying, oh, I'm black, I need to vote Democrat, oh, Trump is bad, man, whoop-de-whoop. But when you hear a guy say that I'm going to take your weapons from you, and now with the whole Democratic run House, Senate, and the White House, they could pass that if they wanted to. And one of the things that will happen, going to my last point is when you said about will people get on that same page? No, because even right now, there were 70 million new gun owners this year. So if these new gun owners, on top of all the other ones, and Joe Biden threatens and says that if you don't turn in your AR-15 and your magazines or pay a tax stamp for it, we're going to arrest you or give you a 10-year sentence. What do you think the average person is going to do? Here you go, Mr. Biden, take my way to defend myself. And it's just, it's idiocy. But people are really still brainwashed by the system of indoctrination through movies, television, the news, and even the school system. Until people really burn that shit out of their mind, or when it's taken from you, this is going to just be the way it's going to go. And I'm not being pessimistic. It's just the way that things are going to go. And when you say about the end, there's no end. I mean, I talked about my spirituality much with you, but there is no end to this world. There's only an end of the way that it runs. We will always be here. Because one thing about this world is that they could put chips in everybody and do whatever they want to. There's always going to be some brown folks somewhere that they don't know are living somewhere. And if they ended up bombing each other, we'll be the ones sitting there going like this somewhere in this world. So
we have some, before Francis jumps in, interesting comments from the comment section. Diane Bertrand says, take out politics, religion, and indifference, and maybe that would be a good start.
Yeah, but how?
There's always going to be some type of system here.
Yeah,
so
if black people take over tomorrow and we run the world, we all there kumbaya and my president is black and all that shit, right now, who's going to be unhappy for another 100 years? Look, like I said, look at South Africa. They're flipping out, losing their land.
But I guess that's the, I guess people, I know we're kind of just having this conversation and we're talking about a lot of things and just going along. But I guess that's the crux of the matter is there's got to be some kind of system, right? And so if we all agree that there's always going to be some kind of system, it means implicitly we're agreeing that there's going to be a hierarchy in that system. And so what is the difference between the hierarchy that exists now and the hierarchy that is going to exist in some kind of system that replaces this? Be it as inclusive, be it as you know, as welcoming, not as harsh, as you know, if you think that the system, the current system we have is harsh, doesn't reflect the realities of the majority of people, how do we construct that new system?
But sorry, the thing is, hierarchy does not mean discrimination. Hierarchy does not mean that because you're on top there, you can decide who is best or who is not. There is systems in the world perfectly right now, you know, and they are not using discrimination to work their system. Ideally, a leader is supposed to be a humble person. Is supposed to be a people's person. You know, so the fact that the people brought you up there does not mean you get up there and they brought you up there because they trusted you. They trusted the system. The fact that they gave you the hierarchy doesn't mean that you have to take the people for granted or go in there and decide that because you are of a certain, I don't know, societal hierarchy, or you are, you know, of a certain religious, I don't know, denomination or background, or from a certain geographical location, doesn't mean that you have to discriminate, you know, between these people. So yes, there will always be hierarchy, there will always be a system, but how can we we don't even want to live perfect. We don't want a perfect system. The thing is, the system currently running right now is not even up to 10% of its perfection. We are not living up to 10% of our potential. We are only living outside. We are not living within. We're sitting here, they're throwing laws every day in our face, and we're just taking them and chilling at home. We're not even questioning them. You know, I'm pretty sure if the government went on TV and announced that if your neighbor has COVID, shoot him, I'm probably sure they will be shooting people because the TV said so, because we have not had time to actually process what's going on. For example, with the pandemic, they say we have to shut down places, you know, they're shutting down schools, shutting down this, but they're opening up Walmart, they're opening up Costco. Have you seen the population at Costco, man? Have you seen the population at Walmart? They're not that busy in schools. So you have more chances of contracting this COVID at Walmart and Costco than even going to school or going to a restaurant. But yet we are at home today. We're going to Walmart and we're calling that a system or a rule or a prevention because we've not had time to process and ask ourselves the questions. What is this? You know? So I think that until we, as like Kenon said, there will be no end of time until you start hitting rock bottom, until you get to the point where you start saying, I need freedom. Then can you wake up? You know, but until then, we are all slaves or victims of the system. Until you sit down and question the things that are being placed in front of you and stop being a sheeple. Like, what do they call that? Sheeple? Like people act like sheeps? Is that what they call them? Sheeple? You know, so there will be no end of time. You know, it's just a cycle. We just have to make sure that our time here, we actually, we're doing what we need, not what we want. We're taking what we need, not what we want. The only reason some of us are taking what we want today is because the system has made it so that unless we take those things, we'll have nothing. It's with the animal kingdom. If you go to the savannah or the safari, you have all animals cohabiting together, coexisting, but the lions are hunting, the jaguars are hunting, but they're still living together. It's their principle. But the jaguars and the lions, they hunt only when they are hungry, when they need to eat. You know, but with our race, we want it. Even when we don't need it, we still want it. You go to some people's garage, they have 5 cars. Why do you need 5 cars? You know, so I think until we come to the realization that, damn, I am in mental slavery, or my back is against the wall, I need that freedom, then can we start tearing down this system, replacing it, gradually. Like I said, we can all live individually, but collectively at the same time.
Very, very
Absolutely.
important principles. I think it's Bob Marley who said we have to free ourselves from mental, free our minds from the mental slavery. And
for example, most especially with us Africans, colonization is not over. Maybe it's not over. It's still very much in place, just in another form of a visa, form of education. For example, you leave Africa, you graduate with whatever, master's, PhD, you travel, you go abroad to Europe, or you come to America, and it becomes useless. Tell you have to go back to school and upgrade your degrees. Then when you go back to school to upgrade these degrees, you actually see that these people are dumbass people, and that you had more education than they did, but they want you to go, bring your degrees up to date with theirs. These are the things that we don't know, that I didn't know until you travel outside and you start seeing that, that's colonization. You cannot leave your country without a visa. You have to apply for the visa. And once you apply, you have to agree to all these conditions they're giving you because you want to travel. That's colonization. But then when they're leaving to go to your country, they don't need the damn visa. So I think that like we need to tear ourselves down and all this, and
it'll happen. But the thing when you say people the sheeple, or it's social engineering. People are not waking up with these thoughts and motives, and when they come out of the womb, they're being taught these ideals. They're being taught. I mean, I have to struggle with this with my own child. Like, hey, I don't want to tell you can't have this technology, but understand that it's not the best thing for you. And it's more important to go outside and play than it is to sit on your computer. And yet I still, or his mother allowed him to have it. And there are things that we allow because it's there, but they're not really good for us. We're not supposed to live on top of each other. We're not supposed to eat 3 to 4 times a day. We're not supposed to eat meat that often. We're doing all kinds of things that have been taught to us through that colonization. And
yeah, just because you talked about the technology, I was listening to a very interesting conversation yesterday, just on this issue of all the tech companies as they've got together. Trump is now silenced across various platforms, and there was a serious conversation about, well, can you really get the morale of that messaging around silencing somebody for for rhetoric that could cause damage without creating a double standard? And they could not answer that question. And I found it very interesting that as much as a lot of people, including myself, who would say, good riddance, good on them, but at the same time, you turn around and say, but why did they let it go for this long? Because he was. How did it go? Why is it that it's only at this time that this is being done, at this very moment in time? Why did it go for this long? And then you go further by saying, so then what then becomes the criteria? If you're the president, you can say as much as you say until you're just about to be out of office or to lose that power, and then you can be silent. Then what about the ordinary person? So these double standards, we see it reflected across various aspects of our lives. If you really want to look, you'll find it. So I found that interesting, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this new trend, because there's certainly going to be a lot of talk about whether this is correct or wrong, what are the ethics around it, and does this create a double standard, and how do you resolve that?
We're already being censored. I mean, look at the fact that we have all these fact-checking things popping up on our social media. And due to the fact that if you look at when you say traveling, we don't even use the same social media from some countries to others. So we're already kind of divided. They're already censoring what we can say, what we can post. Because back when Ebola was a topic, one of the things that was popping up on Instagram at the time with a lot of truthers in the truther community was we came to the realization that one of the people that told us that the Garcia cola nut was a natural cure for Ebola. So as soon as we started typing that in on Instagram, we started getting censored. Your post would be removed from community guidelines. Then sometimes before you would even hit send, it wouldn't go through. Or if you tried to repost it, it wouldn't happen until finally enough people found a way to start spelling and changing the way and be creative with it. And all of a sudden the Ebola shit disappeared. Because the truther community come to the realization that it was a lie. We also started spreading the information that it was a patent made in the United States. So the truth is out there, but there are too many of us from social engineering that believe what they're told. They believe that this education system is the right thing. And it's just their system, like you said, even in America. You can move from DC and move to Virginia. And if they don't look at those school systems as equal, you have to go down a grade. You can't even go and go to that, move to that state and go to that school if their school system is allegedly better. But one of the things I want to touch on real quick is one of the things that also plagues us is that we're not moving very efficiently as thinkers. The English language was a trade language, first of all, mixed with Phoenician and Latin. And it was a way of people that were traveling around the world to communicate, and it became the current modern language. But if you look at it, one of the things about English, we speak it and we think in it. So what that does is that it makes us think inefficiently, because this is the most inefficient language that can ever be taught to anybody, which is why it's so hard to learn for most people. And if you look at the root of where all words and languages came from before they were even vowels in the human language, when they were more symbols and shorter abbreviations or either phrases or gestures, body language, things of that nature. Eventually it came down to the point where that efficient way of being able to say something became English, which is the most bastardized tongue and the most inefficient way, because of the fact that if you look at other languages that take a sentence and space on a piece of paper to get a complete thought off, in English, you have to maybe take a whole paragraph because you have to, in this language, add a plus this and the other to make a word, and then those words to make sentences, and those sentences to make paragraphs, versus those languages that use symbols and things of that nature. It was like this symbol means a whole phrase. So we're moving slower, therefore it's harder for us to process because we're speaking and thinking in a language that doesn't allow us to put everything together very quickly, which is why you see like people say, oh, the doctors use this language. That's because it's easier. There are no words that sound the same but mean something different. This is a very confusing state of mind that many of us are in. And as that commenter said that we should remove spirituality and all this stuff from it, like he said, there will always be a hierarchy, and hierarchies don't have to exist under inequality or racism. And because of removing spirituality from our situation, we forget that there's somewhere else to go when we leave this physical place or realm. And so because of that, our ancestors had a clear understanding of that. Whether the Native Americans or African tribe people knew that this was just a temporary place of existence, treat it as such, use what you need, enjoy yourself, learn from this experience, and feed your soul, which is the actual ultimate you. But because of dogmas of religion, we're praying outside of ourselves. We're praying to an external God. We're praying to their God. And I don't want to offend any of you all, anybody on this show, but ultimately, how can we continuously peel back layers of things that we consider to be evil, but not tear down the things that were given us to us by these evil people? Yeah. Everything we look through with the fine comb. But I will say this, the Bible is not completely fictional, but there are things added into it, like the book of Romans, the book of Kings, and the book of Revelations. These three books, for the most part, are books, and the ones that they took away from the other books that were in other, like the Orthodox Bible in Ethiopia, which has 79 books, I believe it is. We got 66. The whole thing is that they are using everything that is beautiful for us, for them, by giving us misinformation about the very things that we study, about the very things that we apply to our spirituality, and it's working for them. I mean, I don't believe at all that Nat Turner existed. But by giving us this belief that Nat Turner existed and revolted against the slave masters, it gives us this belief that we can do the same thing, which would actually just cause slaughter if we went and played and fought the war the way that they created it. But you're telling me that in the time where the camera was around for 25 to 30 years before Nat Turner existed, there's not one photo of this man? Not one?
And if folks are watching, if you're tuning in, we're here, we're having a somewhat unstructured conversation around a range of issues. Just to put it in perspective. So You know, we're talking about so many different things, and we recognize that. Again, this is the preseason. You know, we're just giving you a little flavor of, you know, how deep we're going to be going this season into some of the issues that we're going to look at. And on those issues, we're going to really have time to explore and bring in some people who, you know, have some depth of knowledge in those issues and question them. And we're going to reason together also and really unpack some of the really weighty things that confront us as humanity. But for now, again, we're here, we're having a conversation. If you want to join us, that's great. I posted the link into the comment section if you want to join. But take all of what we're saying here and understand that, again, we're here having these conversations and we're just trying to let our minds run. It's the beginning of a new year. There's so much that has happened, and we sort of want to talk about it and feel free and have our minds free to explore these issues. I wanted to talk about the last thing you talked about that was on the issue of spirituality and the Bible and all of this. As we are talking about it, it seems all of this is sort of interlinked. You know, we talked about colonization. You know, if you can't talk. Somebody mentioned in the comment section about take away religion, take away, you know, all of these things, and you start to see that, you know, if you want to talk about colonization, you can't talk about
connected.
It. They're all connected.
All connected.
You talk about systems, you talk about governments. In fact, there was a time when they talk about the divine right of kings, and then that transformed into how governments came to be. That led into the systems of trade. You know, we had mercantilism, we had trade by barter, we had mercantilism. Then we move to a different form of economic. So you see that these are all intertwined. But I really like what you said, Kenon, that our ancestors looked at this world as a temporary place. I think that is reflected in spiritual teaching. It's also reflected in biblical teaching. This is a temporary place, and we should care more about the soul. So we are here, we take what we need, we enjoy life, and then we look forward to where our next destination is. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, that, about the afterlife, understandings of that, and how that should inform how we deal with each other in our current existence.
To touch on the part of colonization and mixing it with religion, one of the things I want to touch on is that many people who are consider themselves to be Bible scholars or Christian or whatever religion that you believe in, but most people who are in this world now are Christian for the most part, outside of Muslims. The first book that we go to in Genesis is that there are two different creation stories, and most people gloss right over that. And in the very beginning, it said that God created man and woman, and all was good, right? And then a few sentences later, God created Adam and Eve. And then Adam and Eve had two boys, one of which who killed the other, Cain and Abel. Cain slew his brother, and he was banished by God out of the garden. But what did he end up doing? He found him a wife, right? And that wife was where? In the land of Nod. You go, Adam and Eve, the first two people on earth, and you gotta go back and go, well, he said he created man and woman first. Then he created Adam and Eve. So one of the things that I started connecting the dots at a very early age about the Bible was that it was actually encoded colonization. Because everything that you start going from Genesis, after you get to Adam and Eve, Abraham to Moses, to Noah, to Enoch, which is not mentioned in the regular Bible, the whole thing that you can correlate between all those characters is that they're all considered to be, except for Moses, they're all considered to be white. Noah was, his parents were afraid of him because he was pale, and it reminded him of the angels. The angels are allegedly pale skinned, right?
And white.
And Noah was born pale skinned. He looked like the offspring of the angels and the human beings, the fallen ones of the Nephilim. Then you have Moses, who puts his hand into his bosom and comes out with leprosy and loses all complexion, just to show, and that explains that he was a person of color. But everyone else, for the most part, they're describing these as white folks, down to the fallen angels, to the giants, everything. They're supposed to be white folks, and people skip over that shit because ultimately what they're doing is they're plagiarizing our history in some terms, in some ways, which might also make Egypt look like the bad place. But what did Mary and Joseph have to go to be safe? Egypt. Where did the three wise men come from? Egypt. Where did you get what's the word? What am I trying to say? At that point, they just villainize a place of our true history and origin to make everything like King Leopold when he came to the Congo, or when you see Louis Toussaint in Paris, who has a statue with his foot on top of a pharaoh's head. They're basically using that religious book as a means by adding things into it, encoding things about white people having power, like you said, the Book of Kings and all these things as a way to use it against us. But there are many elements within that book that are our history. They put it there. If you really read it and you study history and look at the other books that have been taken away, it's a colonizational tool, even out to the point where it's what is I forgot what book it was where I think it was, let me see, hold on, I got it right here. Give me 1 second and I'm gonna let you go on. I don't want to take up too much time. I know I can talk. But
Kenon is on fire today. He's hot. Kenon,
I mean, ultimately, I can't find the exact.
Yeah, he's making some pretty good points. You know, this issue of religion is, I think, it's more dangerous than politics.
Yeah, especially when you have a book that tells you to obey your government.
I don't want to offend anybody or anything to anybody who's listening, but I think we Africans, we've been doomed by religion. You know, we've been so much doomed that you can't even see a mile past the Bible. Like, we Africans, we read the Bible like we were reading some chemistry book or some biology book, you know? Like, there's no thoughts beyond that Bible. What that Bible says is what it is. There's no processing beyond that book. And this so-called religion is a borrowed religion that was brought to us by the, you know, white folks. Before their coming, we had our thing going on. You know, we had our own system. Primitive, that's what they call it, that it was primitive. As primitive as it was our system. And even if we say it was primitive and barbaric, wasn't slave trade primitive and barbaric? But the slave masters brought that religion. Then they brought the word Christianity. And then they brought the word Christianity and they said, if you're not a Christian, means you're not a God person, so they will call you a pagan. Before their coming, we never knew what was Christian and pagans. They brought now this revelation. It was like, hey, by the way, if you're not worshiping this white guy, this dude with a beard on the throne, you know, you're a pagan. And if you're worshiping him, you're a Christian. This is the book. And we just swallowed that. And now, and this is back in the days, but 2021, it's even worse. You know, it's not getting better. The region is not getting better. It's only getting worse. People are so caught up in their desperation and frustration that they think that they have to rely on this religion to get out of it. And they're so blinded and short-sighted by this that they they don't realize that everything they need them and not without.
Let me ask this quick question. Let me ask this quick question. So is it that people are perverted? Is it that it is the religion that has led to the perversion, or is it that people have perverted the religion for, again, as we were talking earlier, people would always try to access certain privileges and use whatever means they have. So, for example, you're talking about religion in 2021. You have certain pastors who would say, you know, take this water. This water is going to cure you of COVID.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Exactly.
That's bullshit.
So, is it the perversion? Is the perversion
all the above? All the above.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, do we see the hustle in it? The biggest hustle in giving us the Bible was giving us the belief that it'll all be better when we're gone.
That's the biggest hustle.
like fuck everything here. We don't need this earth and the natural resource of the time that we're here. Just suffer and deal whatever the hell you go through and just believe that one day you can go to heaven. It's all gonna be good. So just screw this. This experience don't mean shit.
Yeah. So
more people spend more time. They spend more time worrying about what happens when they die than worrying about what they do here. And that's a huge problem. But one of the things that we can even look back at our ancestors. We can say that we had the Orishas, we had the Neteru. And the one thing about those is that now they put them in the Bible. What do we have? The different Neteru from We also have the different orishas, which are just different descriptions of all things created by the creator. And now they turn it into Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Jeru, which is basically the same thing. They just mucked it up and plagiarized it. But like I said, it's a hustle.
Dennis, we're glad you're joining us. Jump into the conversation when you can.
Dennis is church right now, man. He can't talk about this.
Dennis is also in the United States, so he may be able to give us some perspective on what he's witnessed.
Hey, Brad. Hey, everyone. It's been Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, I'm at the airport.
Oh, where are you headed?
Man, I'm coming back home. I was in Houston.
Oh, okay.
I went for the program with
Catherine.
Yeah. So I just came back. Yeah. Man, it's just crazy out here. I'm out of words.
You see the helicopters and choppers in Houston?
Yep. I mean, I wish I had joined the meeting, the program earlier, but I mean, you guys see what is going on. We were just talking about it, that the situation is going out of hand. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm just waiting to see the end myself.
We'll wait till January 20th. That'll be a preview.
Right. Yeah.
That was a trailer.
Inauguration ain't gonna be shit. The fact that all those crowds are already able to assemble out there for inauguration, unless they make it some type of where the law says no one can show up during inauguration, like they did in Times Square for New Year's, that's gonna be ugly.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for, Francis said earlier, Dennis, that, when we were growing up, America was that beacon on the hill. We all aspire to it. I have this other perspective, and I know Kenon will challenge it, but I'll just throw it out there for you guys and hear what you have to say. I think that everything needs a stress test, right? And I think that the American democracy is being tested. It's being stretched to the furthest that it could be stretched. And so, I think that there is some degree of confidence that for the folks that look at this, that can say that, listen, it's being tested, but it is standing the test of its time. I guess you would say that we should wait until after the 20th to make those conclusions, but what would be your thoughts on that line of reasoning?
No, I think you're right. You're right in the sense that there's a stress test on our system of governance, but it reveals a bigger problem, which Africans have been complaining for years upon end. In the US, at least they have institutions that work. They have Supreme Court judges that work. They have elected officials, congressmen, senators who could actually stand up to defend their institutions. Talk about African countries with little or no institutions, with judges appointed by the executive who are answerable to the president. So what chance do African countries really have to have a democracy like this one? So I think that it reveals a bigger problem worldwide now. So when we want to talk about democracy or transfer of power, the dictators will be like, you now see what we are saying? They are trying to cheat us as they cheat Donald Trump out of power. They now have a golden precedent to use to say, no, the news is fake. Everything is a lie. Everything has been stacked up against them. So I think it's not just a stress test on American democracy. It's going to be a big issue in the world. What are we going to tell China? So I think this is...
Iran. What about Iran, who has just put out a warrant to arrest?
Ain't happening.
They've issued a warrant to arrest the sitting president of the U.S. So
one of the things that irritates me to no end is, I believe I may have even said this earlier, how can this man be the head of all this evil and now he's silenced? People were calling him a dictator, now he can't even speak. How is he that bad man? And like you said earlier too, they allowed him. I thought that's early on in his presidency. I'm like, you have athletes who can't get away with saying certain things on Twitter, and our president was allowed to sit for all these years, and now he can't. So they want to silence him so they can bring in that new power that they want to have, man, because he's not playing ball. And the one thing about him is that you say we have all these Supreme Court justices and senators and governors and so on and so forth. But the thing we talked about that time when Dwayne and everybody was on the show a few weeks back is ultimately when you become a part of the system, you have a chance of being indoctrinated into that system. So even if we go and work within the confines of our government, try to infiltrate, many of us won't be allowed to. And especially if you're given privileges, most human beings are not going to turn them down. It's one of those things that the government works the way it does by keeping people ignorant to how it actually operates. And so Trump has been literally telling on them for the last few years that everything is fake. Why? Because it is. All of our news stations are owned by the same people for the most part. So you can look at a news station in America from New York to Ohio to Oregon to Texas to California, and they are going to say the exact same thing. There are videos on YouTube now where you see how we have our 4 screens right here?
I've seen one of those videos.
Yeah, and it just keeps popping up, and the windows go to thousands of windows, and they're all saying the same thing in the same cadence. So they're all working under the same guise of who operates and runs this show. And until people come to that realization, we're doomed. But at the end of the day, it's inevitable. This whole thing that's happening right now, this quote unquote coup or change of power, it's inevitable. You can't keep on running a system like this where you put your foot on the necks of people for so long. And you look at what a guy like Trump, people say he's so bad, but he's doing exactly the same thing that Kennedy did. He talked about the shadow government. He spoke about how the dissenters are silenced. And what happened to him? He got his head blown off. The day, 2 days after he gave that speech about how our money is not backed on anything. The Federal Reserve System is a way of just loaning people money off interest, but who's loaning it to us? Who really controls our economic system if we're not backed off of gold or silver? Like Abraham Lincoln tried to put the money back onto a gold system. Kennedy tried to put the money on a silver system. And this guy is exposing all the things going on between the pedophilia that's going on in our government, the sex trafficking. He's exposing all these things, and now he's a bad man. Yeah, he can't be that bad even if he's a part of it. He's snitching on him.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump had a really big point when he came to play. Like, you know, he has a really valid, and his ideas were good, and his plans were good, and you know, they arrested more sex traffickers during his regime than like he busted all of them. You know, he did that, but he just came across wrong. You know,
he had to.
I guess because he was surrounded by these people, you know, so he became ruthless because under him he exposed, like you said, Kenon, he exposed all those things. He did. He's the only one that did.
And Obama didn't say shit about that. He could go into the.
For some part, I think that's why they took him out. That's what I believe. I don't know if it's true, but I think that's why he had to go because.
How can we have voted? This many people of color voted for Biden this time around when there were more people that voted for Obama or for Trump.
Yeah.
And especially in the Black community. I voted for Trump. And I'm not saying that I'm like a huge lover of him, but I'm voting for my lifestyle. One guy says, I'm taking away your things from you and I'm going to do this. The other one says, you know, at least these laws work for me. Yeah. The things under his regime. And he woke those people up as also a means of protection because when he got that group to be on his side, now he has a group that are riding for him. And these people are, whether we want to call them patriots or Proud Boys, not every one of them are on the same agenda. As we look at like even secret societies, like the Masons in this country, every Mason doesn't know the exact same thing that this Mason in Missouri knows, that this guy in DC or this guy in Florida knows. The left doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so this same thing is happening within our world right now. People, it's coming. I just can't wait. I got my popcorn ready and I got plenty of books.
So I guess what we're seeing is that there is a lot of unknown knowns.
Yes.
Yes. And eventually, how do we come to unless we were to adopt an approach that, as Kenon said earlier, you know, this is a temporary residence, this world, you come in, you just live your life, you enjoy part of it, you do what you can, and you look forward to the next life, to the afterlife, because we are never truly going to understand. I mean, just given the discussion we're having, if somebody was sitting back looking at it, you know, you'd easily come up with idea that nothing is what it seems, nothing is as it seems. To me, everything there is a shade to everything. So you would have to adopt that mindset that you just come into the world, you live your life, you do the part that you can, and you look forward to the afterlife and not worry about all the things of this world, which is what the Bible says to some extent. So again, we're seeing how everything sort of is interconnected. What are your thoughts? And Wes is on the comments, and I think he has some things to say. So Wes, why don't you come on and join us and lend your voice?
Get on here, Wes. Until then, the one thing I want to say though is when it comes to that religion, again, ultimately because of giving us the belief that when we're gone, it's all going to be good. But then it also takes away the ability to be afraid to die. I mean, it gives you the ability to be afraid to die because you have these consequences now that our ancestors didn't believe in. So when you tell us that we can go to hell if we don't do this, that, and the other, they have these false consequences that make us afraid to die or live for the things that we're needing to live for. Whereas if we were still under the Orishas or Yoruba or the Neteru or old ancient ways of thoughts, like, for example, the samurai, why do they carry that little bit of that blade on there, that little small katana blade? So if they get captured, they'll kill themselves willingly. Our ancestors did the same things in many ways. Instead of being captured in battle by somebody who would torture you and give up your people, you would kill yourself. Nobody said they were going to hell for doing it. There's noble reasons and times to take your own life. Not every way is noble, of course. But when you give us these fear mechanisms, you make us move in a way that we're not going to fight for what's right because we're too afraid. But if you knew that you were a tripart being, and you say that many of us do understand, people who've been born and raised in the truth from the ground up, there's no question that how this reality works. But we're having to reprogram and unlearn what we've been taught and then get to that place. And it's a little difficult to do that. But we get to that place of understanding that your soul is infinite and this body is just a physical thing, and you're willing to die for what's right, they can never beat us. Look what happened with the Haitians and the French. They didn't have the guns or the numbers. They weren't afraid to die, and they had their ancestors there with them. They prayed their prayer. And our ancestors are right here with us, but we don't want to acknowledge that. We think there's people just died and souls just disappear and go off in the sky. No, they're right here.
Well, folks, colleagues, friends, great conversation. I want to say that we are at the top of the hour, and we'll have some time for some final work. But again, and Wes is joining us just right now. There is a lot in store for this season. We're going to have a lot of important conversations. We're going to have a lot of in-depth conversations. We're going to make a lot of impact in the world with some of the conversations we're having, and hopeful that those conversations spur people into certain actions. Coming up next week, I want to let all of our viewers know we're going to have an artist here. He's an artist out of South Africa. He hails from Cameroon, and he does some incredible art. And he will be joining us here. We're going to talk about art and how we can draw from that to influence the way we think about the world, the way we appreciate the world. And Jibril will be here next week, so tune in next week. Wes, welcome to the show. Jump in.
Hey, how's it going, folks? Yeah, I was watching the conversation earlier on. I really liked all the contributions. Really interesting time to be having these conversations. So thanks everybody. Really enjoyed a lot of the wisdom that Kenon especially was laying down. But I don't think it's time to start considering political suicide just yet. I think another kind of like classic way in which warriors would resolve conflict is to recognize the strength in their adversary. And sometimes, we've all seen those scenes mostly through fiction, but you've heard of it where, two people will be fighting and they realize they've met their equal and they put their weapons away and they'll say, okay, all right, we got to have an understanding. And I think that's a moment in which we're kind of in now, to put it in a metaphor, where there's a serious complex problem tearing across the world, and especially in the United States. And I think that it's not just about treating each other as adversaries, but trying to see what kind of common ground is shared and how we can build for a more healthy society from that.
Very well put, Wes. And congratulations, Wes is the newest doctor in the house. He just defended his dissertation, he defended his dissertation, and that was on his birthday last week. And so we are very glad and happy and proud of you, and happy that you're part of this team and this family, and that we are going to continue to bring knowledge to the world and our viewers. And so congratulations.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a crucial moment in which to engage in the experiment right now. And I'm happy to be able to answer to the title finally. So thanks so much.
That's what's up. Congrats again, bro.
Thanks very much, Kenon.
Yeah, Dennis, I'll go around and have us say some final words. And folks, we should continue in this spirit, and we're gonna do that throughout this year. But Dennis, go for it.
Hey, Wes, congratulations on your dissertation.
Thanks, Dennis.
At least we are really happy, and we can't wait for the knowledge to keep flowing. I just want to thank all of you guys and to tell us that, about what we were saying. This is the problem I really want us to face. We cannot support a system when we are winning, and then when we are losing, we become enemies to the system. We have to pick a position. Either we support the system or we do not. And I think the situation we are facing today is a big challenge in the political world, because we must come to the area where we have standards. Facts matter. Everything cannot be a conspiracy. Everything cannot be up to our own interpretation, the way we feel, the way we think all the time. We will need to have a common ground. And I think the outgoing president has proven that the world needs to come back together and we assess standards. Standards should not be set just by the rich or the powerful for everyone to follow, because they don't have the monopoly of wisdom or monopoly to manage institutions. And I think Donald Trump has proven it beyond reasonable doubt that the US is no longer has monopoly of democracy. And it's sad, but that's what the US needs to work on and see how they're going to change their institutions, move from some traditional beliefs, because there were a lot in the US that were traditions and not actually law. So I think they will move now to challenge some of those things and make their society better. Yeah, that's all I have to say, man.
Well, great insights and inputs as always. Francis.
Yeah. Well, this is my first, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this show. This is the very first time I got on board. I've been following you on Facebook, just like behind the scenes in the shadow, but this is actually my first ever Zoom call. I've never been on Zoom. I don't like internet. I'm not an internet person. I don't like what's going on the internet. So I don't like that the fact that I open my internet is always bad news. There's never good news. So I kind of try to stay away from it. And this is the first time this is my first Zoom call. So thank you.
That's some good news. That's some good news.
Well, I'm glad that we on Unfiltered helped disverting you on your Zoom experience.
Yeah.
Breaking boundaries.
Yeah, you popped my Zoom cherry.
Yeah, we popped your Zoom cherry.
So you got some good news. Let's put some good news out on the wavelengths. What's on your mind, Francis?
What's on my mind?
Yeah.
I just want things to be better, man. I just want things to be better. I just want things to be better. I just want to wake up and pick up my phone and read something nice. Not every day, this one has gone up, the other one has gone down, this one is left, the other one, it's always drama. And they say bad news travel faster than good news, and that evil is noisier than good. Evil is always making a lot of noise, but good is always like very quiet, So I want the good to start making noise. This is a start. Look at you guys, wonderful people. You have a doctor in the house. You have Kenon, our very own Marine, ready to support us. You have Dennis on the other end. So, and I think that this is the beginning of a good news, and this is particularly good news for me today for joining you guys. So it is my good news today for joining you guys.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for this opportunity, and most especially Chebs for bringing me on board.
Yeah, Chebs.
Well, Francis, like we said, you have great insights like Dennis and all of these panels, so feel free to always jump on the show. The link would always be available, and we always welcome contributors to the show because that's how we're going to build this information, knowledge transfer, sharing network that we're building. Kenon, I'm going to give the last word to Dr. West because he came in later and he's going to have something to say. But Kenon, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. The thing I want to say is that, because I know I come off as pessimistic or negative, and I do agree with what you say about the bad news traveling faster. The only thing is that I've just come to the realization that before it does get better, it has to get a little worse, because ultimately, just like growing pains, before I grew to be 6 foot tall, I had stretch marks all down my thighs. My knees weren't fine. They hurt. My back hurt. But then when I got to be 6 foot, I walk around like, yeah, I'm a big dude now. It felt great. So in order for us to get to that place of, which I don't believe that it'll be a utopian society, before it to be better than what it is, a lot of evil is going to have to be removed. And it won't be through, hey, that's just treat these people nice. Because, for example, what I'll say is this. Even if the power structure changes tomorrow, if our government changes the way that it works and the people that are running it, there's going to be millions of people walking around pissed off. So even if the power changes hands and things get better for a certain group of people, it means it's going to get worse for somebody else, and they're going to hold resentment, and they're going to find their way to fight back. Like the old European tribe saying is that about colonization in Africa. We fed the snake until the snake got too big and ate us.
Yeah, well, that just really goes to show how Kenon and I are on the same wavelength, because I was going to say the same thing about the desire for good news, looking for that. I mean, definitely there's some hard truths that have to be accepted out there. And so I was kind of even going to question my own statements earlier about talking about trying to find the common ground and maybe that the kind of expectation that we could reach a consensus and just get to some good news, you know, sometime is coming from a privileged perspective and not willing to accept the fact that there is some pain that's necessary to, you know, for changes to take place to reach a more meaningful sense in which, you know, good news is not just better for some, you know, good for some and not for many others. And so really trying to come through to get to a place, you know, does require something that might appear very scary, and you know, what happened at the U.S. Capitol building is very shocking, you know, and that is definitely true that was a show of frustration, but it has to be one that's accepted. It has to be accepted, and there are lots of even bills that have been trying to pass across the Congress floor that are scary enough, and I think that it's time to accept those hard truths. So yeah, we got to get through that. And I wanted to see what Kenon was saying, because before, you know, you've really been one of the most brave to talk about those, and talking about Martin Luther King's speech about the house, you know, him looking back on his legacy and wondering if he'd let his people into a burning house, and you saying, you know, real change is only to come once that house is burnt down. So I wanted to toss it to Kenon for last word, actually, if whether or not where we're at with that house burning down now.
Well, the thing is that we're all in the same burning house now, no matter what race, religion. So in some ways, even though he may have regretted his move on integration, and I have a weird feeling about having a biracial family. Like, I don't want to say that I didn't want to meet you at summer camp if we weren't integrated. You know what I'm saying?
You never know. That just goes to show you never know.
It's one of those things that it would have given us more economic impact. But as we saw in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they destroyed Black Wall Street, we had infrastructure, we had businesses, schools, and hospitals, and banks, and they went over with World War I airplanes and blew it up. So it's one of those things that now that we're all in the same burning house, black, white, brown, or yellow, some of us are going to be on two different sides of the house, choosing how we're going to help each other get out, or whether we're going to stay in and burn down with it, or whether you're going to get out and leave somebody in there. We're at a turning point that it's going to happen organically once the masses of people start to really see what's going on. Many people are just coddled and privileged to have running water, electricity, cartoons, TV, and movies. So when all that shit's taken away, then we'll really see what humanity is made of. And it's coming.
Well, I got to tell you folks, we have never had a very, very spirited, impromptu conversation. So kudos. And if our viewers are watching, this should give you a taste of what 2021 has in store. here at Unfiltered, because we're gonna go down those shades and open them up and look at what's under there and make sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned and that we're looking at all sides of these issues that we talk about. So thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for calling me out. Thanks for calling me on.
All right.
Good to have you. Nice to meet you, bro.
Nice to meet you, Kenon.
Thanks, Francis.
Okay.
Later, Dennis. Later, Kenon.
Thank you.
Later.
God bless. Stay blessed.
Stay blessed, people. I will end with some little mutumbu. Yeah. So for real.
Hey, Kenon, you ever been to Canada?
No.
You should
No, I
come.
haven't. That's actually sad because I got so many friends up there. I don't know why I haven't.
Yeah, you should stop by.
I'll make that happen.
Yeah.
I'm waiting. Let me get my STEMI checked, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop up there.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, you should come. You should come through, man. You should come to Canada.
I'll make it happen. I mean
come get a different perspective. See how life is here. You know.
Yeah. I mean, and having friends across the world and hearing their thoughts on things, that has definitely opened my eyes up. I have traveled. I've never been to Canada. Yeah. So being able to travel a little bit over my life, I've been able to meet people and talk to them about how they feel versus the American mindset can be really fucked up. Because it's like, it can be a very tunnel vision. People only see things through their lens of where they're from and what state they're from, or even in this country as a whole. People are really like stuck in there, set in their ways, and it's bad. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm really been cutting people out of my social media forums, people that I communicate with, because it's not that I don't want to deal with adversity, but I don't like dealing with people who have already drawn their line in the sand and they're absolutist. Yeah. Like, I can be wrong with anything that I've said. It's just that I try to lead by spirit and see things through discernment to see where things are going versus trying to come up with some type of like mathematical equation to figure it out by looking at the news and this thing's happening. No, I'm just watching it as it goes and seeing the flow of it all. It's, and Americans are going to have to come off their own pedestal. And I can't wait for that, because unfortunately too many people have this way of believing that they're so right and the rest of the world is so wrong, when I realize other countries are way older than ours.
I was watching this show, just messing around, and I was watching this show, 90 Day Fiancé. It's one of these shows on Netflix, and it's basically people who meet online and they decide to get married, without even seeing each other, and it can be from any country in the world. And this lady, she met this guy, and she went to Nigeria. She said, she's from but she's from the US. I don't know what state. She went to Nigeria to marry this guy. That's what I'm talking about, man. So he went to Nigeria to meet this guy, and they got married, and she was living. She tried to like live there, and she everything she saw or said was so negative about the guy and his family and their food, and she went to the market, and the market structure that they have there. Back home in Africa, some of our markets, it's common that when you go to the market, they put the fruits on the streets, or you have to walk into the market and like there's food. It's not like a package or word presented the way it's over here. And she went there and she was like complaining and bitching how Nigeria was not good, US was the best. And somebody went and made the comment that like, you of all people living from the States, with what is going on right now, you go to another country and you're trying to convince the people US is the best after everything people are seeing on TV, So based on that, like, I've been to the US just 3 times. I've been there 3 times, and it's been more like 5-6 years. I've never been there again, and not that I don't like going. It's just that the people, you guys are like, you guys are comfortable. You love your comfort.
That's what keeps people in their place. And that's how this country has kept people from rebelling or doing anything crazy by making everything nice and comfortable for you enough to stay as a slave, to pay taxes and do things that they know are necessarily illegal or wrong. But what do you do? Who are you to challenge it? And even in this country, the one thing that makes it so unique is that, like, these are country-sized states. So Florida, they're their own world. People from Southern Florida are unlike anywhere in the United States.
It's like 52 countries in one country.
Yeah. And then you got New Orleans, people in New Orleans and Southern Florida right next to each other, but they're night and day. And then you go to Chicago, you go to New York, you go to California. It's like different countries, literally. People don't move the same way, so it's not united, especially when the laws don't even translate. I have to go through things again. If I go right to my grandmother's house in Maryland, which is 10 minutes away from here, I put my shit in the safe in my car because it's illegal for me to have my gun out or to have 20 rounds in my magazine. They're all kind of stupid things that happen in this country, but it's a way of keeping confusion going so that they can maintain their power.
Well,
and we're teenagers in this world, literally. Other countries are hundreds and hundreds of years older than us, and we're just coming into this realization of who we are. People born here and don't have ancestors from outside of this country have a hard time coming to the realization that just because you're new doesn't make you better. Shit gets recalled.
All right, folks. Great evening, great conversation. Now I'm gonna go have a cold one, and and prepare.
You guys made my day, man. You guys made my day. Thank you for.
We're glad. Join us anytime.
Let me know when the next episode is coming out and what it's about. That way I will be prepared. Today, I was just chatting with you and you sent me the link and I popped in.
Yeah, and that was.
No, we appreciate you, man. You brought some to the conversation, man. Definitely.
Yeah, today was just
next time, give me a heads up.
Always brings the fire in, so it's.
Yeah, Kenon, you're a very savvy man.
Thank you.
No, it's good. It's good. Because I always thought that not all, but most of Americans are always like very ignorant.
We are many.
Yeah,
I was.
That you're a very savvy man. You know beyond your boundaries, which is really good. Which is a really good weapon to have.
I appreciate that. And one thing is, where are you all from?
Cameroon.
I never asked that. I can see that in you. I can't tell where Chebs is from. I got some friends from Cameroon, so I can see the phenotype in you. But I've been a little confused about Chebs, where he's from. Because I'm pretty good at that shit, of picking out where people are from, looking at their features and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, I'm from Cameroon, the French.
I thought you were either from Cameroon or you were from Sierra Leone. There's only two places I thought you were from.
No, I have been to Sierra Leone. I do business in Sierra Leone.
Businesses in Sierra Leone too. So.
But I'm born and raised I'm a proud Cameroonian all day, every day.
I got some good ass cigars too.
Yeah. That they do.
Yeah, we're gonna once all of this is done, we're gonna have to have you up here in Canada. We'll probably.
I gotta make that happen. Man,
you gotta take a drive, man. If you take a drive, I'll meet you down in Nova Scotia or Mark and come over to Montreal. Nova Scotia is only 10 hours from me, so
yeah.
I'll make it happen because you mess around. I mess around when we get to get rid of my ass. I might do what everybody swore they were gonna do in 2016. We all moving to Canada.
I know there's a bunch of them here, but. Yeah. All right.
Do you really have some new people there from America living in Canada?
Yeah, we have a bunch of people.
A lot.
A lot, actually. They actually have a little, it was funny during the election, they were interviewing a bunch of them because they were organizing here in terms of who people were going to vote for. There's a lot of people who made the move.
I guess probably New York City, because New York City's empty.
Yeah, a few years ago, I went to the U.S. Embassy to go renew some of my traveling papers, and I met a U.S. a woman there from the States. She was there with her husband and her kids, but they're U.S. citizens, and they've been living in Canada for like 2 years, and they came to denounce their U.S. citizenship, and so they